Put your red shirt on and a brown coat too. Everybody's joining the crew. We got just one ring, let we rule them all. Hope people remember your thoughts. Get your Ulu feathers and your Middle-earth guns. A sonic screwdriver or a sword plus one. Usually when steel it will get you to come. To the pit tank. To the pit tank. The Rocky Mountain pit tank.
Hi, I'm Guy.
Hi, I'm Troy.
I'm Chelsea.
And this is Geek Tank.
You're back at the Toilet Bowl, tiny little container-sized podcast.
So we were going to have a special guest today to talk about NFTs, but he obviously is having technical difficulties and can't show up at the moment. So
he's non-fungible.
He's non-fungible at the moment.
Is that what it stands for? Non-fungible
token.
Yeah.
Yep, non-fungible token.
Don't know what
that
any
is
of this
such
means.
a weird term to me. Like I don't.
Oh yeah, because like all of the other weird terms that we use in
there's a comedian named Ron.
That's not what I meant to do.
There's a comedian named Ron Funches, and so non-fungible makes me think non-fungible.
Non-fungible. Now I'm thinking of Lunchables.
Lunchable, non-lunchable.
Non-lunchable tokens.
No. Oh my gosh.
So we were going to save that until we had our computer specialist here to explain and hopefully easy to understand definitions of what the heck is going on with NFTs, as opposed to
weird.
Yeah, because otherwise we would just be reading to you off of Google, which is exciting as that is. You could do that yourself.
There is sort of that.
I've heard a lot of people try to report on this, and I've understood none of them. So,
Great.
Am I officially old? Is that what it is now? Like, I can't understand things anymore.
I think it's just too.
I really wanted to have Shane on here is because Shane has, over the years, I've known him since high school, and over the years, he's been able to explain to me weird and bizarre things about computers.
Weird and bizarre things.
He's really, really good at making it layman. He's, he's a programmer and he does all the super programming stuff. And so I remember him talking about randomizing once, and he was like, computers can't actually do random because they just can't. So the only way that they can is to tie it to like the clock and pick a time and add to the time that comes from the clock, so that at any given second, it'll always be a different number. And I thought that was interesting. This was a long time ago too, so I'm sure that now they probably make a random number generator or something that's a different chip in your machine.
To answer your question, you're not too old. I think it's just too new at the moment, and in another month or two, as it gets more popularity, it'll be making more sense.
I had asked him if he knew about them, and he says, I totally understand the technology behind it. I do not understand why people do it. So I thought that's perfect. He'd come in and tell us the technology, and then we would speculate on the why.
Which the why I already have a grasp of, because the first I heard of it was an artist friend of Guy's was super angry at other artists that were jumping onto the NFT bandwagon because they use apparently tons of energy to simply exist because they're storing that information. And so it's not good for the environment.
Yeah. If it's not good for the environment, then I'm not in.
Yeah, except that
just at all.
And that's what I actually need Shane's help for.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's going to be one of those things that I'm sure Brent could probably explain it too. So if we can't get Shane, we just hostily.
Because did you know that
Brent in here?
You should clear out your email every once in a while because all that data has to be stored somewhere on the server. So if you clear out your emails pretty consistently, you're reducing your carbon footprint, which I like.
But don't do it. Don't do it if you're running for president, because then the deleted emails will be held against you.
Yep.
So
they were on a private server. A private server that apparently goes out at night and kills people.
I
Mhm.
just, oh
Sweet.
God, can we
In
talk
there.
about how much like I hate political conspiracy theories? Can I just, no, I just don't know. The liberal agenda, the conservative agenda, I just don't care.
All conspiracy theories suck.
No, there's actually, I have a good one. Can I tell you my favorite conspiracy theory?
Sure, it sucks, but go ahead.
Okay. So they only plant male trees in neighborhoods because if we had female trees, first of all, they'd be messy from pollinating, but second of all, there'd be free food because female trees usually produce fruit. And so the reason we don't have
For
any
the
females
season.
is because they're all male trees. And that's why allergies are worse too, because there are no female trees to suck up all the male pollen, which is natural.
Incoming
See,
transmission.
that made my
That
phone
is-
go off talking about sucking up pollen.
That's my conspiracy theory. And it's also because they want you to buy produce in a grocery store. They don't want you to have free access to it in an urban environment. So that's my favorite conspiracy theory.
Does that
I'd
mean
like
that
to
my
think
apple
it's-
tree is a female apple tree?
I think
Yay.
so. It should be.
Sweet.
Or
is
the
it-
one is so cute.
Is that, I think that really what's happening is that it's a female apple tree some years and then a male other years because it's only like produced apples like every third year or something really weird.
Do you know how much energy it takes to create fruit?
Yeah, probably at least 2 NFTs. Right? I mean, like, that's all I can say at this point in time.
So 2 non-fruit trees?
Non-fruitable tokens.
Non-fruitable tokens.
That's why my tree won't produce apples.
Oh my God.
We've solved it. I'm
We
happy.
did it.
Done.
Done.
We've solved it. It's solved. Okay, so potpourri.
Well, so I'll touch on it briefly. The reason for NFTs that I've heard is it makes it impossible
Let's
for
not talk
artists.
about NFTs.
Well, I'm whetting the appetite for listeners to come back so they can get to. And since we left it kind of hanging there, so the reason for it is if you as Chelsea make this amazing art painting and put it out there in the internet, I can then, even if you watermark it, I could copy it and download it. And then I can go into Photoshop and I can remove your watermark. And now I've got a copy of your painting. And then I could go and turn around and sell it. Or I could alter it a little bit on Photoshop and then say, it's a whole new thing that I created and sell it. And you violate all these, you find these like dirty ways to get around copyright laws.
So this is why Disney is coming out with new shows. Sorry.
Yep, exactly. And so NFTs are supposed to be completely impossible to replicate. So if I buy a Chelsea NFT painting, I'm guaranteed only I have this. Nobody else has it.
I just don't, in the age of the internet and like hacking and all this stuff, I don't know how just you could have
exactly.
access.
I need to talk to Shane.
Exactly. So, but that's one thing we'll explore with Shane is like how safe is it in that?
Yeah,
so,
or I mean, I'm sure that's part of the reason why it costs to fruit trees to make an NFT. So
yeah, because they're constantly changing the codes and everything.
Constantly changing the fruit, and sometimes it's oranges, and sometimes it's apples, and sometimes it's
that sounds like it will waste a lot of data.
Yeah,
that'll take a lot of. I mean, I get creating personal experiences for people, but like, go outside.
Go outside.
Commission a painter to make something for you, right? Like you do, like. My tattoo is a symbol that is all around for BTS, but only mine is orange in this exact size.
Did it go outside? I'm wondering.
Like you can commission. I would say like what I would compare that to is, for example, Emily went to a tattoo artist. She scheduled an appointment on Instagram like a year in advance. She wanted this specific werewolf and raven tattoo, and she is the only one who will have that from that artist who designed that tattoo. Now, there's no guarantee that like somebody might see it on the internet and copy it, but that's kind of weird. Like
Alex wears an entire sleeve that I designed.
So, would
really
anybody else have that sleeve?
That.
Like, that's a personal experience, right? Like,
mm-hmm.
I totally
you
destroyed
could go
all the copies of it too.
There's dinner with a certain type of friends and have that unique experience. So I don't understand.
Yeah, morally, I'm against the use of energy for that. So
Yeah.
The use of apples for making tattoos, I think
for
so.
oranges, can't
So
be
my
trading those
answer
apples
is,
for oranges.
what are you doing? Go outside.
Yeah,
Yeah, like my dad. Like I said, you sound like my dad.
turn off TV and go outside.
Turn off the TV. Go outside.
Quit watching Star Trek.
Quit watching Star Trek.
Go outside and
world
play
out
Star
there.
Trek, okay?
Yes, go outside
You'll
and play
know
with
Picard until you've experienced
go play with
Picard.
your cardboard phasers.
Right?
Oh my gosh.
All right, so we were talking.
Leveled up though. I no
Yeah.
longer have cardboard phasers.
Yeah, you've
I
upgraded.
leveled up.
I had a friend who used to make them out of tinfoil, purely like out of tinfoil, and then sculpt them. It was crazy. Dude
That is
was talented.
Nice. So
Man,
we were talking about possible topics when we were realizing our expert was not going to show up, and I pulled up a list of 10 geeky debate things, and when I'm reading through them, one that popped that seemed to trigger Chelsea and Guy's interest was the switching. Let me find it here. So, is race switching casting a good thing? So the picture they have is Michael B. Jordan played Johnny Storm in the remake of Fantastic Four. So despite the fact that from what I've heard, that movie was horrible, what is that an issue when you take a predominantly historically white character in a fictional white character? Let me specify that it's fictional, and change them to help bridge the gap, because for the longest time there were so few people of color in comics.
Mhm.
That to me, it's like, well, now that we don't have that kind of wall blocking us, why not explore this concept? Like I think switching Nick Fury to Samuel Jackson was like one of the best moves ever, because he just plays such a fantastic Nick Fury, and I can't imagine.
I don't know anybody else who could play Nick Fury,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah.
Off the top
Makes
of my
total
head,
sense.
it just fits. You know, I feel like, and this is difficult because this is like in an ideal situation, right? I feel like if race were not a barrier or an option, it would just be like pick the best actor for the role,
Mhm.
given like their history or their auditions. You know, we don't live in that world, unfortunately. We do live in a hierarchical world, especially in Hollywood, and Hollywood's been probably the worst at casting, particularly for minorities, and people have not been treated well.
Yeah.
You know,
True.
so talking about an ideal world, right? Like I would prefer to see a very diverse world with people who don't look like me or I don't necessarily identify with, so that I could see their perspective. I do love diversity in the world. We live in a diverse world. And the fact is, in America at least, that by 2024, we will be the minority.
Mhm.
I'm fine with that. Really, like I'm not upset either way. I don't really care who is the majority, as long as people are treated well and treated equally with respect. And I know that's an ideal situation, but it's something I prefer. Like the Witcher casting, like, was really nice. I mean,
Yeah.
I love Henry Cavill. Like Henry Cavill was the perfect choice for Geralt. I was really worried about him for a long time, but he did a beautiful job. But if somebody else came forward and could have done a better job as Geralt, I wouldn't have minded any other actor.
Mhm.
I wouldn't have minded. You know,
Unless if it
Jennifer-
was Kenneth Branagh.
Yeah, then I'd be pissed. I'd
Yes,
be
you
pissed
would
if it
be.
was Ken Branagh. I'd be absolutely pissed. But like anybody else, like I really don't mind. Everybody was freaking out about the Cowboy Bebop casting, and I just looked at the cast and I was like, that's a good looking cast. They
By the
look
way,
like a lot
I
of
watched
fun.
I don't
Right.
understand how that could possibly. Those guys, as far as like skin tone wise, fits about as close as I could think to Spike and.
I watched my very first episode of Cowboy
Hey.
Bebop last night,
Oh, good job.
because it managed to avoid me all this time, and now that the
Watching
Netflix
Fury
shows,
episode, still my favorite.
yeah, well, I mean, watching it, I'm like, oh, I'm sure Guy likes this because it's basically Firefly.
And Ed is the best. Edward.
Edward.
But yeah, since they're doing the live action, I thought, oh, I'm going to see if I can find it, and sure enough, what's it called? I think Funimation is free.
Yep,
You can get
Funimation.
Funimation for free and watch it on that. So I watched the first episode. It was definitely interesting, and What is the controversy with that? Because I haven't read about it. Is the
Yeah, I
actor?
haven't either.
They
I mean,
thought, okay, this is not even a race thing here. People thought John Cho was too old to play Spike, and it was like, what do you mean?
So it's an ageism thing.
It's an ageism thing. I was like, are you serious? He's
Hey, man,
such a good
that's
actor.
Sulu
He
we're
is
talking
so
about. We're talking about
funny.
Sulu.
Like, what are you talking about? And ageism is a thing in Hollywood too. Like,
Mhm.
there's so many problems, right? Because it's all about like the young and the beautiful and the people. Like, I had a freaking horrible time as a child because I thought you weren't supposed to have pores. And I have huge pores in real life. They have so much makeup and skin blurring in these things that, like, you can't tell. Or like makeup. Camera, will you focus, please?
So there's a Amy Schumer skit with Tina Fey that is definitely
We love you anyway.
it's
all
not
good.
it's not
Even
safe
if
for
your
work.
camera won't focus on you.
It will.
So there's an Amy
It's
Schumer skit with Tina Fey, and it's not safe for work, but I definitely recommend looking it up. But it's about an actress's last believable day that a male person would want to sleep with them. And I'm using the PG-13 version of the wording of that. And it's Julia Louis-Dreyfus. They're celebrating her last day before they send her off, and it's making fun of how that day doesn't exist for male actors. It's only for female actresses,
Yep.
and so. But yeah, there's definitely a messed up standard in Hollywood about that kind of thing.
We've got a lot of messed up standards. Actually, that's one of the things that I'm really liking about our current sort of what everybody keeps calling the woke era that we're in right now, is that people are starting to smash through those standards. And they're actually intentionally going after some of these standards and picking on them. And I love it. I absolutely love it. That was what I was talking about before the show. I've been watching Schmigadoon with Mariah because it is literally like exactly the kind of thing that we would watch. It's making fun of all of those 40s and 50s musicals where, like Oklahoma and all of that stuff, except that the gimmick is it's a couple who's been dating for like 3 years or whatever, and they decide to go on this lovers retreat because they're kind of having relationship issues, and they get lost in the forest and end up in a 1950s era musical. And so they're the straight men in this entire musical, and everybody's singing weird songs, and they're all singing around them and doing dance numbers and all of this stuff. And of course, it's Key and Peele. Is that's his name?
Key and Peele, yeah.
Key and Peele.
But that's a comedy duo.
Oh, then it's
So
Key.
you're talking about, okay.
It's whichever one was the anger management or anger translator for Obama, which I thought was hysterical. He's in that as
So
the
it's
guy.
Keegan-Michael Key. Okay.
Yeah, he's the guy, and the girl I haven't placed yet. I know I've seen her elsewhere, but I haven't. Anyway, the point is, he spends the entire time with his eyes about this big, going, not another number, not another musical number. Oh God, another musical number. And it's hysterical because he's straight manning the entire thing, and it's really funny. And I know he's got a pretty voice, so there will be a moment where he sings, and it's going to happen. And I'm just waiting for it. But one of the things that they had said somewhere along the line was that the entire first opening Schmigadoon dance number occurs, and they're all dancing and doing their high kicks and all these things. I mean, they've got the real like Broadway style going for it. And she says, "This is really weird." And he goes, "Well, yeah, but hey, high marks for diversity," because it's true. Like, though this is Oklahoma, the cast is actually diverse. They've actually got like multiple different racial groups, and it's 50% women and 50% men. And you know what I mean? Like, it's
It's
really
important because, like,
and
I've
for some
seen
reason, I
all-white
was
casts
really
of,
finding that to be refreshing.
oh, what is it? I just blanked on the name.
Yep.
The Jets and the Sharks.
West Side Story.
West Side Story. I have seen all-white casts of West Side Story, and I was like, what the hell is this?
Well, and the logic has always been that this is a New York gang. And I'm like, yeah, except that half of them are Mexican, Puerto Rican.
Like you
Puerto
miss
Ricans. The
the
racist.
whole. There are certain key pieces, right?
Her name is Maria.
Well, but on the opposite side, like when you gender swap things, I would prefer there to be a reason. Like in Denver, at the DCPA, they did "What if Hamlet was a woman?" And we're like, okay. And they're like, that was it. That was the only thought we had. That was it. Not what about Rosencrantz and Guildenstern? Are they women now? Like, are you trying to see what like gender stereotypes there are in Hamlet?
I was in a gender swapped play of Waiting for Godot, but that's just because the entire cast was female and I was the only male, so it made sense. And it was funnier since in the thing the slave is female, so it was just switched so the slave was male.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
But then you're seeing that, and you're seeing the comedy there, and you're seeing
right.
the culture commentary. Just making Hamlet female,
Right, for the heck of it.
does
Didn't make any
nothing.
sense. Yeah.
Like there's a lot of disconnects there, and nobody really honestly changes Shakespeare. But like, if you wanted to explore that, just flip all of the roles.
Well, you'd have to because of the way
what happens.
The way it's built on a monarchy, you would have to flip all the rows in order for it to make sense, since Hamlet's supposed to be the heir.
And then you need to highlight all those differences, right?
Yep.
There needs to be a purpose behind it. In June with Leet, there weren't enough female roles, and the director said, well, Leet is all about preserving this planet and building a better future for humanity and keeping the peace. Mind you, I haven't read much Dune yet, but I've read all the articles about it.
Well, that's it. I'm out.
I'm working on it. I'm getting through Dune, but that makes sense, right?
Like Dune is really hard to read.
It is. I started the first couple pages, and is it Leet? Leet. That's weird. Okay. I just need to get through it. I just bought a limited edition copy. I really did want to read Dune.
I got Dune on audio tape because it was so dense and difficult to read that I've literally been listening to it while driving around.
It's really concentrated sci-fi and social commentary. A lot of people have said just struggle through and you will enjoy it. And I'm like, okay, I will struggle through.
Totally enjoying it. But it was too hard and too dense to read when I was younger. Mm-hmm. And I can read it now because I'm older and more patient, but it's hard. It's really tough. So
I'm trying to think of like, if there would have been, I think maybe Game of Thrones would have been nicer because it was such a big cast. If there was a way more diverse staff, it would have been more fun to watch. That was like white people central. I watch a lot of BBC productions and I feel like there's a little more representation over there, but I think they're a little more aware of it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like when I look at panel shows, and somebody had mentioned this on Reddit once, when I look at British panel shows, there's always one woman and one person of color, and then it's usually a bunch of white men. And so there's some effort there, but honestly, like it's not good enough. You know, it's not diverse enough. You don't see a lot of people who, like, you don't see a lot of transgender people. You see a bunch of gay people. It has kind of become the norm in comedy to have gay people around. I don't know if it's for like the relief of it all or to make things a little bit easier because then you have, you know, the straight and the gay jokes.
Speaking of that, that reminds me of the whole mess that happened with Batwoman, the TV show with Ruby Rose. She ended up having to quit Twitter because of all the negativity coming out. There were people saying she wasn't gay enough to play Batwoman. And
I thought that was hysterical.
Because I think she came out something like 6 or 12 years before she even got the role. So she had been established as being a member of the LGBT community, but yet I guess she wasn't gay enough to play her or something. And
so it's really weird because, and I've talked about this with a lot of friends over time, being gay is a spectrum, just like gender is a spectrum, just like politics is a spectrum. And if people are having a hard time with it, they just tend to lash out instead of be kind and be understanding. Like, we're definitely working towards a more understanding and inclusive world, but like when we don't understand things, a lot of people tend to lash out.
Mhm.
And it's strange because there's been so much suffering, especially in the gay and the Black community recently, right? It has been a very difficult COVID time. And it's just like, can we find a way to make life better
But
for
to me,
everybody? Like, how do you have to be gay enough or dark enough
right.
or light enough or feminine enough or masculine enough? You know what I mean?
To me,
Because
it's one of those
all
things where
spectrum.
it's. I understand the need of wanting actual sexual preference people playing those characters because they've been overlooked for so long.
Sure.
And it's
Well,
like,
they understand the background, you know, they understand the struggles.
Well, part of acting, if you're a good actor, you get into it. So I don't mind. I have no problem with a homosexual playing a straight character or a straight character playing a homosexual character, because I feel both of them need to raise their levels of acting to that job. But that's on the surface. What's not on the surface is the fact that homosexual people and people of color are so discriminated against that they don't get roles that they should get.
Yeah, and
And
that's where it gets
so,
hard to balance.
and so
That's why
that's
the whole ScarJo thing blew up so big.
right, because I mean, really, if she's a good enough actress, she should be able to play a character from another thing. This brings us back to the color. Is it right to change the color of a character? Well, what is the importance of that color of that character? And so, for example, with Ghost in the Shell, there's a little bit of an importance with that character's origin being Asian, being Japanese. Unlike,
And I will
yeah.
have to say, I will have to put the provisional alert that
Got to put the anime nerd alert.
Yeah, anime nerd alert.
Anime nerd alert. A friend of mine
Makoto
also said the same thing. So
Motoko Kusanagi, who is the character in Ghost, is ethnically ambiguous because this is like her third or fourth body.
Mhm.
And so every time they blow her up, they just clone a new body from someone and build her. You know, it's her ghost that's the important part, which is the ghost is the spirit inside you. That's the whole point of Ghost in the Shell.
The problem is like a lot of our history, especially in the United States, with like the Spanish flu and now COVID 100 years later, is a lot of Asian people, whether they be from China, India, Japan, Korea, are being murdered, are not being given roles, are being swapped for one another, and that's not okay. Right. Memoirs of a Geisha was a huge blow up. Chinese actors playing Japanese geisha was insane. Like, to me, it was very culturally insensitive. But I also see the point of like, if they had a couple Chinese actresses that worked with Japanese actresses in tandem, then maybe you could see different pieces from the different cultures, because they do share similarities. But
all I was doing was just giving the prerequisite nerd alert on that one. The truth of the matter is, I still am bitter and angry about that, because I feel like the actress that played in
Alita.
No.
Are you talking about the gal from Pacific Rim?
I'm talking about, she was in oh, come on, Pacific Rim.
Yeah, Pacific Rim. She was really good. She would have been great.
She would have been an awesome Kusanagi, and I would have loved to have seen her as Kusanagi. So personally, I absolutely think it should have been a Japanese actress who had played that character.
Rinko Kaikuchi. Kaikuchi.
Well, and you know, Brent does make a good point. Like, Neil Patrick Harris played a straight man on How I Met Your Mother, but that was because that show was very about straight people. Like, you have like your Will and Graces, you had like your gay shows and your straight shows. Like, they were completely separate at that point.
Will and Grace, if you watch Will and Grace, he is such a caricature. Will is of like homosexuality that it's kind of embarrassing to watch now. You know, because like now I know, well, I knew back then. I've known a number of gay people whom you wouldn't know that they were gay just by talking to them. You know what I mean? But whereas he's like, oh yeah, you could tell he's getting, it's like we're kind of perpetuating a stereotype, and that kind
Yeah. Well, and actually, we talked about this at work the other day. We were talking about diversity and inclusion in the workplace. My new workplace, Chase, is specifically reaching out to people on the spectrum to make sure that we are employing people who can bring their assets to the table, because they do have, just because you're neurodivergent doesn't mean you can't work and you can't benefit from being in the workplace. If you're very focused and good on like QA, if you're very focused on digital art, if you're very focused on writing or about customer experience, you don't necessarily need to be customer forward, but you can be in the background working with a team and just saying, hey, like my social skills aren't so good. So if I laugh at the wrong time, it's my brain. It's not me. I'm not trying to intentionally be hurtful. You know what I mean? And so
you've got a very specific, I mean, first of all, I'm very fond of your boss. So there's that.
He's not my boss. He's not my boss. I'm in a different
pseudo boss
region. Yeah.
Yeah. Your regional doodly wop. I like him. He's cool. But that's a different story completely.
But also the way we see neurodivergence on television, especially throughout a lot of time, is not appropriate, or ADA is not appropriate, right? If you told me like somebody had Asperger's and to compare it to a person on TV, I would think of Boston Legal. There's a character named Jerry, and he has a lot of tics, and he is, I don't know how on the spectrum, and I'm not even going to say because I just don't know how that is or what equates. You know what I mean? That's the biggest thing, is it's a spectrum, right? Like people are all different. Oh my God, newsflash. So, but Jerry's character is very much like a spectacle of what someone on the spectrum could be. You know what I mean? So in a way, it's like, it's damaging because everybody thinks that that's going to be the person on the spectrum in your office, and that's how they work, and that's how they're going to be in society. And that's just not the case. It's just not.
As somebody who is neurodivergent, I kind of, and have had to struggle all of my life to be normal.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice to be in a position now where I work for myself. It doesn't pay well, but there's that.
But that's like the newest thing in the workforce, is making sure that this is on the present field. Okay, we've tackled the race issue, we've tackled the LGBTQIA issue. Now let's tackle the neuro. It seems like it's kind of whatever society is focused on that companies are focused on. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but it's like Monster of the Week. You know what I mean? Not Monster of the Week. Let me not compare it to that. It's like Flavor of the Week.
But I think I know what you're talking about.
Well, what's interesting with when you're talking about all the spectrics, they also have that on the show Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist. They had, which is a musical show, had an episode that focused on deaf people, and they actually had a musical scene for deaf people with sign language. So they didn't subtitle it. So
I love that.
So it's one of those.
Not for you.
It's not for you, and so that was pretty cool to see that exist.
Well, that makes you like want to go out to people could speak ASL and be like, hey, I'm actually really interested in this. Could you translate that for me? Like that makes me care even more.
Right.
And want to reach out and work.
So
work towards.
Interesting thing. Somebody had been. I gotten into a discussion, argument, on the internet. I know you're all shocked, but it was
somebody I know.
No. It was on a Star Trek forum. They were talking about the new Star Treks are killing Gene Roddenberry's vision, and I went in there and I was having a discussion about this, and I realized something very important. Gene Roddenberry's vision isn't about a utopia. And I think people keep thinking that Roddenberry's vision is about a utopia. It's not. It's about a world where it doesn't matter what you are physically or mentally. You still are a Starfleet officer, and that's the most important thing.
Really quickly, when did Gene Roddenberry die?
91.
Yeah, his eyes are already gone. There is no vision.
You're very funny.
Sorry, it
But-
popped up. I had to say, but like it's true. It's social commentary. It's supposed to get you talking and keep pushing, right?
Right. But the point is that the universe that Roddenberry created, it was limited because he had a 1950s brain when he created it. There was
Yeah.
nothing he could do. He was being awesome by including a black woman. And in his head, that was awesome. But as time has evolved, the people who have taken charge of that particular vision have extended that to realize that it means everybody is a Starfleet officer. It's kind of like the opposite of our argument about midichlorians. The reason why we all hate midichlorians is because you have to be now special. You have to be a chosen one to be a Jedi. You can't just be, not just anybody can be a Jedi anymore.
Yeah, you have to be a
You're
fetchel
chosen,
speaker.
right? And this is like the opposite of it. Anybody can be a Starfleet officer. You could be a Starfleet officer. Everybody could be an officer. It doesn't really matter.
It's like the Oprah of Starfleet.
Right, exactly. You can be a Starfleet officer, and you can be a Starfleet officer. But I mean, the point is that that's the actual vision of Star Trek, is that we all work together, and it doesn't matter what we are. It doesn't matter where we come from. It doesn't matter all of the stuff. You went through Starfleet Academy. That was good enough. We're all good. We all accept each other. And the world, then we all work together to fix all the problems. And sometimes people break, and sometimes people get screwed up. But in the end, we all get straightened out.
It's funny to me because when you talk about sci-fi specifically, or you talk about like dystopian future drama, like sci-fi is all social commentary, just in space. Like, if we had this technology, what would life be like? What problems would we be facing? You know what I mean?
Sure.
Sci-fi, I feel, is a solid conversation starter, particularly towards like what is going on in our world and how we can fix it, or is this an idealized view of the future? It's why I don't like to stare at sci-fi very often, because sci-fi makes me analyze and think about how much I hate the world as it is, and I can't fix everything. So a lot of times I have to take a break from that. I have to step away from Star Trek, and I have to step away from Dune and Star Wars, and just
look into
live
sci-fi?
in fluff
You
for
wear
a
like the
while.
special glasses, like
I
those
just
thick
like
glasses.
I have to take a break sometimes because it's overwhelming. And I think
Don't
when
look
you talk
directly
about
into the sci-fi,
sci-fi,
Chelsea.
right? And you find people who want to talk about sci-fi, you're talking a lot about political and social commentary. And some people get so obsessed and overwhelmed that they lose sight of the bigger picture, right?
Right.
And it's difficult. Sci-fi is difficult. And I think people overlook that a lot. Sci-fi is not the easy way out. Sci-fi is not easy fluff you can write in a day. Sci-fi is a lot of thought and preparation. And what do we want people to talk about this week?
Yeah.
So
I just said I like this enough. I'm going to write it down. Don't look directly into the sci-fi. That's going to be a segment or something from now on for us.
Well, I think with COVID, you know,
don't look
a
directly.
lot of people are sitting at home watching stuff. And so now, even more than ever, it is big to be present and to show an accurate representation of the world. Like The Witcher is all about Nordic folk tales, or I'm sorry, he's Polish. So he's dealing with like Eastern, he's dealing with a lot of different European and Islander folk tales. And yes, all those people might have been mostly white, but you have to remember that history is not so black and white. History is still just as diverse as we are now. People are eating, you know, probably as well back then as we do now. Like, they ate some species extinct, you bastards, and now I can't munch on them. But they were also talking politics and talking religion and trade and all these different things, right? So the world was not this black and white picture that we see. And now our media is finally reflecting how diverse our world is, and we're freaking the hell out.
Well, I did an analysis somewhere along the line, because Discovery is the first Star Trek that actually matches our population here in America. I mean,
wow.
It is.
I didn't realize that. That's super cool.
The 9 main characters, you have 40% white and 60% of color, 50% female and 50% male. It
That's
actually matches
freaking awesome.
the makeup of like America. It actually matches our makeup, and it's the first Star Trek to do so.
Mhm.
And it's interesting because, and I count Saru as a white name because it's Doug
Do you?
Jones. As much as I adore Doug Jones, I was like, I don't know what to.
He's
And
a little fish alien being. I
And-
love aliens too. When games aren't alien enough, I get upset.
but I mean, and it has about 5% homosexuals and about 5% transsexuals,
So
which
we gotta
matches
talk
what
about
we
that.
know. I mean, because it's like the
That
best
matches what we know.
guess. It's
Yes, it matches what we
the
go.
best we can guess, because a lot of people won't self-identify because out of fear or whatever. So you can only guess. So it's the best estimates.
There was a talk about that in the 1970s or 80s. This scientist did a test where he brought people in and interviewed them to see if they had a homosexual experience and if they identified as openly gay. And you have to remember it was a random assortment of people, and he determined from this random survey of people at that time in person. It wasn't even in like it wasn't a what is it called? Like a blind survey, right? It was like he knew all the people. So he estimated from this that 10% of the population is gay. And that has been a number that has held strong for some stupid reason.
Sure.
It is not based in any scientific evidence,
Well,
okay? It's not a thing.
Chelsea,
as far as we know.
Chelsea. Hello. There have been more recent studies than
There
that.
have,
but the problem is that all of the more recent studies have the asterisks on it, which is, and they say specifically that there is no way that we can accurately count this because many people won't admit or openly say something for fear of retaliation.
Exactly.
So they have to say 10% asterisks. So that's what I'm saying is like the Star Trek cast fits 10% asterisks with the best we can do with the knowledge that we have, which is probably wrong. But I mean, I look at my cadre of friends, and that holds about 10 or 15 thereabout in that. But that's only if you hold homosexuals over here and trans over here as completely different things.
Yeah, I blend those because if somebody is trans and straight, then they are trans and straight. If somebody is trans and gay, they are trans and gay. Like, to me, it's just.
Right. Well, that's why is because of the people that I know that are trans, they tend to be a mixed bag as to whether their respective other is of the same gender or of different gender. And so it's like I seem to see those as separate issues because you could be any combination therein. But
and
I think
would say
really,
like of the people that I know, I'm closer to like 20-25%. And we're both on like the artistic side of the world.
Right.
So
and I'm
it's
sure
where
there's
it's
a
more
whole bunch of
accepted,
people,
you might say.
Yeah, I'm sure that there's a whole bunch of people that are, homosexual that I don't know about because it just never comes up. You know what I mean?
Also, in the same vein, there might be more people who are neurodivergent that you know that you don't realize.
It never comes up.
It's like the mental illness thing too, right? A lot of people are talking about like depression and bipolar and schizophrenia and anxiety disorders, and it's more present now. But would you say you actively knew that about people you are very close to unless they told you or you went through a lot with them? You wouldn't know.
And so a lot of this is, of course, I put the asterisks in there, which is to our best knowledge. And our knowledge will increase as time goes on. And as the culture loosens up and becomes more relaxed, more people will feel more comfortable and stuff like that. So, I mean, that's the thing is that, all I was trying to say was kudos to Discovery. All the stuff that people whine about it being so woke, it actually matches to our best knowledge.
At least of
our culture.
And that's definitely trying. That's putting your best foot forward and seeing what happens.
Into it, right? And that's the point. That was really the whole point. All I was trying to say was they're doing a good job with trying to make it work.
Well, like
I'm
meanwhile,
noticing.
also we have
Uh,
this weird thing with China right now where their men aren't masculine enough because they're not having enough children. So
Yep.
they've outlawed all foreign idols from Chinese television right now, which is insane because their men aren't masculine enough. They're too feminine.
Well, and that's the problem. That's going the wrong direction. That's going the wrong direction because that's something I had said to a friend of mine about toxic masculinity. One
Hmm.
of the things that I have considered to be one of the best things that ever happened in my life was getting married, not because of the married thing, although that was a very good thing, but because now I can say, Troy, I love you without any of that weird, oh, I'm not, having to like, or whatever, or
Not in
say,
that ridiculousness.
Chelsea, I love you, and give you a hug without you going, wait, are you hitting on me? Are you hitting on me? Like
Mhm.
all of that crap is gone. Now I can just tell you guys I love you
But
because
it's not gone. It's just gone in our bubble.
right.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's like I don't have to worry about that stress anymore. That was a stressor for me, because I have a lot of female friends and it would become a stressor when that would become are you hitting on me? No, I'm not hitting on, never mind. I didn't mean to say, never mind, just forget it. You know what I mean? Like it became like this intense stressor, or you'd say, I love you to a guy and they'd be like, wait, did you flip to homosexual? And of course in the 80s that was a big deal,
Hmm.
like,
Well,
because it was so
even
bad.
you had the whole beer commercial
Right.
with the
And
"I
it was
love you,
like,
man" thing.
right. Yeah, right. You had to like add the I love you
Love you,
man
man.
so that people would know you're still masculine.
Oh man.
And when you hug, you have to do the 3 pats on the
Yeah.
back
And
I
you have to
don't like.
keep your hips this far apart from each other because otherwise,
or positioned at an angle.
yeah, positioned at an angle. And it's like that's such a stupid, ridiculous setup.
Mhm.
And it was so, I don't know, uncomfortable, and it was just aggravating. And so that's one of those things that
There's a whole
now,
generation of fathers who wouldn't hug their sons.
right. I mean, like, it's my kid comes over and just climbs into my lap. That's really cool. You know what I mean? Soon he won't be able to do that because he'll break me. However, for right now, it's really nice. It's very comfortable. He puts his head against my shoulder and he just hangs out there. And sometimes that's just the nature of the beast, and it's totally awesome. And that's something that you don't see. And I remember doing that with my dad. That was actually something I hadn't quite remembered, but of course, now that my dad has passed on, I keep having dreams now at night because my brain is clearly processing down on, just trying to pack it up and make it all work. So I've been having a lot of dreams of my dad recently. And I remember laying in bed reading books with him, and he'd have me in the crook of his arm like this, and he'd hold the book. And, I was probably 8 or 9, you know, and that was just a thing. And I liked that. And I realized that my dad was I'm not messing with this stupid masculinity crap thing. And so he decided he wanted to hug people, and he was, we tickled and all of those things. And, you know, and I, now I'm kind of getting a little choked up because I miss my dad. Anyway, but I'm the same kind of person. And I was realizing that that's the thing, is that we're not allowing people to be themselves, whatever that themselves is, right?
Hmm.
We've got all of these structures and designs, and we believe crap. And in that instance, I think the belief is women won't like you unless you are John Wayne. You know what I mean? And that's a belief system. Unless I sit there and swagger in and tell everybody that, I'm going to go shoot my horse or whatever is going on, women won't like you. And it's a construct in our culture. It's
Hmm.
that construct. So men are forced to go, oh, I don't want to give this woman, I like this woman, I don't want to give her the impression that I'm gay with Troy. So I'm not going to hug Troy, or whatever. You've got like these bizarre constructs
I don't
that
have
come from the
time for
culture.
that at all. I don't have time for like a macho bro who's gonna come up and
And
save
that's
me
the
from
thing.
every drag. Like I would murder a man like that.
Well,
I would
sure. And that's the thing.
It would be
In real
the
life,
worst thing ever.
in real life, women are very diverse. It's just like what I keep saying to women all the time whenever they're like, I'm going to lose 50 pounds or nobody will like me. I'm like, men are so diverse. There are men who like big women. There are men who like little women. They're all over the board, everywhere. But our culture keeps saying that if you're not blonde and like 32 triple D, then nobody likes you and weigh 100 pounds. You know, if you're not that structure, men don't care. And of course,
I
the
do
reality,
appreciate
you're
that, like,
all over the board.
at some point of maturity, you stop giving a fuck, and that's my
Right.
one. At some point, you stop.
That's your
caring.
one. We're still holding a PG-13.
Like, you know, and for everybody, it's a maturity level. It's not an age level. Like, I hit 30, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, you're so old," and I was like, "Actually, I feel pretty good at 30. I am stable now. I
But
can
now,
make good decisions."
all of a sudden, you just hit 30, and I realized that both Troy and I are like exactly 20 years older than you.
Yeah, you're only halfway through your lives. Chill. You're
Yeah,
fine.
no, I'm good. Hey, I got standing desks. I'm standing.
I'm
My
sitting over
chair.
here with my like little quilted blanket and my boyfriend.
I recently saw a friend post a thing, which I'm sure the guy knows about since he's on to Japanese culture that I didn't. But there's a phrase called Christmas cake in Japanese culture, referring to women who are over 20 something. And
But that has been true of Japanese culture for a very long time, and was true of our culture for a whole long time. I mean, there were words that I can't even remember now, but I mean, being Southern, I was raised knowing these words. There were words for unmarried and over 18, unmarried and over 25, unmarried and over 30. And they were horrible words, and I don't remember them because they're horrible words. I mean, they're not horrible words. It'd be like vulture or something like that, which, you know, doesn't mean anything unless you're saying, well, Chelsea's a vulture now, you know, or whatever, you know, like I have now just decided you're a vulture. So there
I'm
you
down
go.
vulture.
Yeah, there you go.
Um,
But I mean, like, there were words for that. And it's trying to keep our culture. There is a fear of having your culture walk away from you. And there's a big fear of that. And so one of the things that I think science fiction is great about is it builds a culture. And in that culture, it can be whatever you want. And you can design a culture that can be inclusive. Because in that structure, you're still a Starfleet officer. You know what I mean?
can we talk about that for a quick second?
How I'm
This
trying
is
to
a
draft
weird
you all into
tangent. Yeah, well,
Yes.
no, I just mean like, so a lot of people are looking for culture right now, right? Like America's this beautiful melting pot, and so a lot of people are getting like DNA tests to find out like where they're from, so they can connect to their ancestors and connect to some kind of culture, right? You already have culture. You are an American, as you are here. If you were born here, you're a mix of things, right? Like people talk about like, and I'm trying to remember the exact wording on this because I watch a lot of TikToks on history just for bite-sized downloads and then kind of go on deep dives. And I haven't had a big deep dive on this yet, but like American folk music is kind of a blend of different like German and Irish and Native American, just all these beautiful, I'm sorry, not Native American, indigenous peoples music. You have this blend, and that is the new American culture.
Mhm.
Like you have that music now. That is your folk music. We do have a culture. It's just not like, it might not be a center point of our society. It might be their like familial culture, like what they do and how they respond to family and friends, right? But it's not necessarily lost to you. You're just searching for something different.
Oh, yeah.
Does that make sense?
Or like Troy and I, who were both raised in the Southern culture, but have a lot of rejection of it. There's a lot of structure in there that we don't like. We love the fried okra. Well, maybe I like the fried okra.
I love fried okra so much.
You and I are totally eating fried okra then, man. We're in.
And proper sweet tea.
Right?
Not mixing sweet and low in my iced tea, Deborah.
Stop doing that. But I mean, like Troy and I will love to the end of the earth hot sauces and things like that as part of our culture that we grew up in. But we
Mhm.
don't like the racism. We don't like the sexism. We don't like the structures that were built in there. Uh, Calling women vultures or whatever it was that was the words because they were.
But now you have your own geek and
I know I have
familial
my own thing
culture.
now.
So you
You are now a
have
vulture.
culture, but
But I mean, that's the thing, right? So you were talking about this, and I was bringing up, of course, my communicator because to some degree, this is a culture that I like to identify with.
mhm,
I like to call myself a Trekkie so that I can have a culture to connect to that is mine. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
I agree with. And it's a good culture and it's fine. And I get in there and argue with Trekkies all the stupid time because I'm stupid, but that's okay. It's my stupid and I'm fine.
Well, and also kind of blending into that, right? There's this weird line right now between like a cultural appropriation and cultural appreciation,
Hmm.
which is it's a very hard line to kind of navigate, but I think when people I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. I know
Sure.
I get mad at a lot of folks, but and I get mad at things because I react emotionally first and logically second. I am a Romulan. Hi. So
It's all good.
people who love anime and manga and they get into Japanese culture. Me as like a K-pop stan, like reaching out and trying to learn about the language and the culture and the history, learning about like ancient China because the three oh gosh, it might be I'm so brain dead. I'm so sorry. I've been trying to shove so much training in my brain I can't think. There's this ancient folklore in China, which might be folklore, but it might be history. They're not sure because China's so old. Like, it's good to go back and read at that and look at it and be obsessed about it a little bit and like learn all the things, right? Like, I knew people who were huge into Greek mythology, who were huge into Norse mythology. And as somebody right now who's digging into more Norse mythology, and liking the iconography and liking the culture and liking the stories, I don't want to be seen as a white supremacist because
Right.
these
But
symbols and this
here's
culture and these stories are used a lot by white supremacists for whitewashing
right.
and for ethical purity. And I hate that. I hate that
Sure.
bit, but I love it so much that I want to keep digging and I want to keep exploring and I want to see what's relevant to me. Because if something speaks to me in Japanese culture and Korean culture and Chinese history, in Norse mythology and Greek mythology and history and philosophy, why should I not be able to take those things and make those a part of my life and make those a part of my culture for me and my friends and my family, right?
Well,
It's
there's a
not
difference between
appropriation,
no, it's not because you're a world traveler.
appreciation.
There's a difference. There's a difference a lot when you are appreciating humans being humans. You say you are who you are. I'm not talking to Kevin. I'm not talking to Kevin. He can call me at 9 o'clock at night, but we're not clear yet. Um, but there's a thing about being a human in this world. I
Mhm.
love indigenous culture stuff. Mom was into it too and stuff like that. But
My grandparents were as well on my
yeah,
mom's side. They were huge collectors of Hachina dolls that were made specifically that they could purchase from indigenous people.
right. And
So,
there's like phases of my life where I was closer and farther from it and things like that. But the truth of the matter is that it's appropriation to just walk off with it.
mhm.
So, but what about then Japanese culture? I'm second second degree black belt in Kyudo. That's a
Yeah.
legitimate skill that I earned, and that's
Mhm.
a in Japan. And the primary reason I did it was because it's the one that's the most steeped in the culture.
Mhm.
But I know I'm a visitor in Japanese culture, but I'm a welcome visitor in Japanese culture. You know what I mean? Like some people consider me family, but not because I'm Japanese or American or anything like that. I'm just family because that's who they are and that's who we are, and we're all good. All's fine.
Mhm.
That's not appropriation. I still feel like in the end, I'm a US citizen, I'm an American, and I'm a Trekkie. And those are kind of like the things that I go back to.
Mhm.
It's not appropriation to be a second-degree black belt in Kyudo. That's not appropriating their culture. I don't identify as Japanese. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And I
Like
think that's
Jim Tyler's dad has been educated in Japanese tear ceremony. He's been educated in Korean martial arts, in Japanese martial arts, and so he still practices those
sure,
because he's earned those ranks when he was over there.
sure.
It's just interesting to see, like, I don't know if it's my generation in particular, like, lash out at other people if they're not like trying to
Because
be something they're
it's
not,
because
or
when you're young, I know I did this.
you
When
trying
you're
all the
young,
different hats.
you find different identities and you slide between identities all the time,
Hmm.
right? Because you're trying to find yourself. And
Right.
when you finally do find yourself, you kind of look back on yourself and you're like, that was stupid. And you know, and then you kind of see other people doing it and you're like, look, you're 45, stop. You know what I mean? Like, you know, it's okay when you're 15 or 20 or even 25, but stop, dude. Stop.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like at some
Yeah.
point in time, you can't take somebody else's culture and say it's yours and then modify it. What
But
was it?
wrapping
Oh,
that back around, if they have enough representation to see what they do appreciate and do like, and
well,
pieces of culture and
it
media
is
that they have easy
sometimes
access to.
it ends up being brutal. The indigenous uh, uh, consultant on Voyager turned out to not be indigenous at all.
Oof.
And so that's one of the reasons why Chakotay comes across as tone deaf, because it turns out he wasn't even remotely indigenous. He was just a fanboy.
Whoops.
And so Chakotay often comes across very tone deaf. And I thought about that at the time. And I know a lot of my indigenous friends now and indigenous friends back then, they just kind of take a deep breath and they just let the Chakotay stuff kind of roll. You know what I mean? But it's
Mhm.
tone deaf.
What about when we hit points, hopefully, like in Blade Runner, where different cultures start inundating the culture that they're in, and then it takes on its whole new form and existence, where all of a sudden the culture, I don't know, picks something that is indigenous, that and just say it becomes something that now becomes something everybody wants to be a part of,
Or evolves.
or
That's an
evolves.
evolution.
Like in
I feel
Blade
like
Runner, the clothing
right.
takes on a thing, and they have what they called Spanglish, which was a mix of Japanese, Spanish, English, and I feel like there was a fourth language in there too. But
I
when
think
they're
it's
talking,
Japanese. Yeah.
so is but I mean, it'd be neat if our culture got so blended that we didn't have to worry about that, and that it became a whole new culture.
You have that in Firefly too,
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
where
Firefly
Chinese culture is
that was a
blended
very
in.
intentional move in Firefly. The idea was, I mean, Joss had said from the get go that, and it's that by the time this had happened, there were two cultures that came out ahead: China and America, and so everybody either spoke Chinese or they spoke English, and that's pretty much the way it worked. And it was an interesting take on it, but that was
Mhm.
intentional. That's not appropriation because that's part of the story.
Yeah,
On the
but
same
you're
token,
seeing an interesting look into what would happen if this blended together.
it's the same thing you were talking about before at the very beginning when you were talking about Hamlet and gender flipping Hamlet.
Mm-hmm.
If you're just doing it to go ha ha ha, then it's stupid. But if you have a point, if you
If you
have a
have a
point,
goal, a
right? If
very
you have a
focused goal,
reason,
not like
right?
a general goal, a very focused goal, then it
Right.
comes across well.
If everybody in the culture wears feathered headdresses because somewhere along the line you had this super awesome indigenous person whom they're all respecting, then your science fiction has a point behind it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's not just, well, we sort of felt like everybody would just be somewhat indigenous at this point. So they're all wearing feathers. You know, at which time you're like, what? You just gender flipped Hamlet for no reason? there's no logic to it. And if that was the case, then I feel like that would be acceptable. It's all right if everybody's wearing feathers because, back in 23, 22, this very important indigenous person who came from a history of the native tribes in America, yada, 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 yada. And you have it as part of the history. That's a different story. I don't think that's appropriation at that point. Because there's a certain amount of respect. I don't wear kimono and hakama because I'm appropriating the culture. I'm wearing it because it's the uniform that's supposed to be worn when doing kyudo. So it's not an appropriation.
A lot of people in historical fashion say historical fashion, not historical values.
Yeah.
Because they love the garments that were created for their shape, for the time, for their fanciness, for their non-fanciness, but they don't have those historical beliefs.
Yeah.
Well,
that's the thing. So, I mean, I guess that's sort of my thought on this one too. We've kind of railroaded Troy out of this particular entire discussion.
Well, I don't like to interrupt, and when you get on a row, you don't leave any spaces to talk. So I just let you go for it.
It gets to the point where Chelsea and I are talking over each other to get words in, both of us.
Like, oh, it's been a minute. Got to get that 3 balance back.
It has been cool standing this entire time, but it is exhausting.
You need a mat.
A bar chair.
Maybe a mat on the carpet would be good.
I was thinking a bar chair.
I was just, that defeats the purpose.
Well, no, the purpose is to stand most of the time, not every second.
No, actually, I have a chair in here. I just intentionally put it somewhere else in the room so that I'm not allowed to sit at the chair and work at the computer, because I know that if I put the chair here, I'll ultimately just get back to the point where I'm sitting at the chair and working on the computer, and then I'll be back to square one. So
you just have to pull it out for Monday nights.
No, it's actually fine. I'm just
Monday night.
I will get better as time goes on.
Instead of Monday Night Football, it's Monday Night Sitting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, it's all good. I'll get there. This is part of getting better. I want to be a better person. I mean, NDK kicked my butt, and I was in pain for a week after NDK. So that was a wake up call. We got to stop. I got to be able to walk the floor at NDK, or I'm gonna have to resign. So, because there's no way I'm gonna be able to keep doing it. So this is a big opening, like eye-opening thing where I'm like, oh, yeah. So it's all right. It's all good. But this is day 1, so I'm not expecting miracles. It's the first day. I'm good though. Okay, guys, I think that we've kind of hit an end point here.
So, are you free next Monday, Chelsea?
I should be, yeah.
Because I saw our guest had posted about 20 minutes into the show that they realized they weren't here and were asking to reschedule. So possibly we could do non-fungibles next Monday.
Yes, let's do non-fungus souls next.
Funsicles? Funsicles.
Funsicles. Non-funsicles.
Non-funsicles. Yeah, I'm really curious to hear about this. I'm trying to wrap my head around it.
I do want to go down the rabbit hole that is Disney with you, Chelsea. So brace yourself for that. But we can, because you've got a lot of good opinions, and I want to hear all about them. And I want to know what you're thinking on this.
Be ranting for a while.
Yeah, but it's a viable rant. I mean, it's you've got good points. Or at least you've got good points. I wouldn't know. You haven't said them yet. So it's all good.
We just need to reach out to Disney and see if they'll have somebody come be a guest on a show for Chelsea to shout at.
Well, I know people who work or have worked or by association work for Disney, like
I had a couple of buddies who worked as animators there.
And people who call Disney their home for a really long time, and I just cannot abide.
One of
who does not abide?
Nick's best friend's aunt worked for LucasArts.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah,
Who's
So-
that?
Nick's best friend.
Oh yeah.
His dad's sister, which would make it his aunt.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I don't think she's still with him anymore, but she might be. I don't know.
Oh, I know.
I was like, did she leave before the acquisition or after?
I don't know. I know
Curious.
that that's why there's a bunch of Star Wars stuff in the house because
Fair.
it filters its way to him. All right. Well, cool.
Fair. Okay. Well,
So we'll non-funge it up next Monday.
did you reply to?
No,
I
I
did.
messaged you.
I
and
let
said-
Shane know.
Okay.
Yeah, next
Yeah.
Monday will be good.
Okay, good.
We're good.
Well, then, everybody, you did see us do our quick banner brand, but we were in the middle of talking just so that we can bring this up. Our show is sponsored by Kieran Games, Geekway Home, Shiny Garden, which is coming up this weekend, isn't it? Or was it last weekend?
28th. So, oh wait, no. Yeah, I guess it would be this weekend.
It's this coming weekend.
Yeah, because after
Coming
that
weekend.
is Mile High.
This coming weekend is WhimsyCon, right?
It is, yeah. But it's my birthday weekend, so I will not be at WhimsyCon.
It's all right. I actually, Justin and I have not talked a whole lot about what we're supposed to be doing there, so I'm not even sure Geek Tank is supposed. We haven't officially put ourselves back on the roster yet.
I don't think for
Nobody's
any cons at
calling us
all.
to come in because we haven't decided yet whether we're de-COVIDed or not.
Yeah. Well, and like we
So-
all went to NDK because we work NDK and there were securities in place. But NDK is the first convention I've been back to in Colorado. And the week before that, I was at a Pinnacle event for Deadwood. So
Right.
I don't know. It's an interesting time because I realize I've been on all these trips and I kind of panic a little bit, but then I remember that I've gotten COVID tested before and after and been okay thus far.
Yeah.
So-
And so we want to tell you that we're sponsored by Kieran Games, Geekway Home, Shiny Garden, and your
mom.
Your mama.
Right. Okay, that's all the time we've got for today. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you all next week when we talk about fungus and tokens and toes and fungus toes and fungus.
And thanks for being here, Brent. We
Thanks
appreciate
for
it.
being with us, Brent. And until next time, I've been Guy,
I've been Troy.
I'm in Chelsea.
and this is Geek Tank.